Process. They're not saying that they play the 16. Good morning, the 16. I thought somebody do. Rolling. Yes. Hello and welcome to the program Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. I am Sheikh Smaila. Well, our quote of the day is from an anonymous writer, and it says, "Budget is more than just a series of numbers on a page. It is an embodiment of our values." Well, coming up in this edition of the program Good Morning Sierra Leone, today the Minister of Finance will be presenting the 2022 budget to the world. Well, as I'm talking to you, I'm in the well of Parliament right here on Tower Hill. Well, as all of us know, we are still in the fight against COVID 19. So it is imperative that we keep ourselves healthy. So let us watch and see what is there for us this morning. Yes, we are still in the fight against COVID 19. Today, we are bringing you Good Morning Sierra Leone live from inside the well of Parliament as the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vanley, will be presenting the 2022 budget to the well. Well, in this we have members of parliament who have started coming in, but also members from various MDAs, members from the diplomatic and consular corps, civil society, media practitioners, all of them are entering the well. But the program is yet to start proper. And also, good morning, Sierra Leone, from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation and also the outside broadcast team. We are all here to ensure that we give visibility to this particular presentation this morning. But I will now start talking to various dignitaries who are here for this occasion. Let us start with Ahmed Sisse. Ahmed is the communications officer in that ministry, the Ministry of Finance. Now, Ahmed, welcome to the program. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much, Sheko, and welcome to listeners from the Well of Parliament.
Yes, to talk to us about what are the expectations. What do we expect to hear from Mr. Minister today? Although yes, we know a day before yesterday there was a very hot debate here, but at the end of the day, the budget was actually approved. The 20 years, yeah, the Finance Act was approved, and today the Minister of Finance is going to do his presentation to the entire world. Now, what are some of the things that we expect, in this particular budget 2022?
Well, thank you very much. As of the things that will be in the budget, the minister will have to read them when it takes the podium at around 10 a.m. this morning. But this program today, the reading of the budget, is part of the Minister of Finance constitutional duty to present to the House of Parliament a budget 6 weeks before the end of the year for the the preceding year. So we are here today to fulfill that constitutional duty. The Minister will table the budget, read out government economic policies and statements, and alongside the budget for the year 2022. This has been a very long process that started some time ago in September when the Minister of Finance put out a budget call circular to various ministries, departments and agencies for them to put in their priorities for 2022. That budget call circular was followed by budget discussions wherein MDAs had to come to the ministry, present their budget and discuss last year's budget, discuss the current 2021 budget and what they propose to do in 2022. Mind you, all of these presentations were tied towards the National Development Plan, which is a very key document, and also the Manifesto of the New Direction. That's the key documents that we are tying all of these government programs and projects to ensure that by the end of 2022, going to 2023, most of these projects will have been achieved.
So, in other words, Ahmed, are you saying that this particular budget, is going to really target existing projects, because there are projects that are yet to be completed? So is this budget going to focus on existing projects?
Well, from the budget discussions, the Minister of Finance, Dennis Kevan, made it very clear that we cannot accept new projects if you have unfinished project, because it's very important and necessary that you complete ongoing projects. We also know that we have ongoing projects in energy. We have the 7 district electrification project going on. We have water projects in different districts, road construction projects. So we are looking forward to see how this budget will further strengthening the implementation of those projects to see that they are completed. And we also know that the free quality education is a major aspect of government program, and we are also looking at how the budget will continue to fund the free quality education, health, agriculture, and those sectors. But the details of those sectors, allocations, and policy directions will be read by the minister.
Okay, now let us look at the Finance Act. The Finance Act that was actually approved, by Parliament on Wednesday. We heard about tax cuts. We heard about tax waivers, as the case may be. So let us actually know some of the items on which or services on which these tax cuts are going to affect.
Yes. So the Finance Act, as you know, is a document that is usually used to either impose or alterate taxes and other related financial matters. So we are looking at a document that can enhance the aspect of revenue generation, because we know that domestic revenue generation is very, very key in financing the budget, because if you cannot raise enough revenue to finance the budget, then you have a very big deficit, which is the gap between what you expected to spend and what you expected to gather as revenue. So the Finance Act that was passed, in as much as revenue is key, but there are also aspects in the act that are looking towards, proper policies that can relieve some of the economic, shall I say, hardness or hardship on people, because the Finance Act talks about cement, for example. They reduced the import duty on cement from 10 to 5%, from 20 to 10%, and that of iron ore from 10% to 5%. So these are some of the things that are in the Finance Act, and there are other aspects of the act that deals with strengthening, public financial management. That's towards the recommendations of the audit report, to see how public officials, can, in the fastest, within the fastest time frame possible, implement recommendations in the audit report. So these are some of the highlights of the Finance Act. But most importantly, also we all are aware of the Wellington incident. So this act also, propose an establishment of an emergency disaster management account that will be at the Bank of Sierra Leone. They are managed by the National Disaster Agency, but that account will be there, and it will only be utilized when there is an emergency, and the authorization will come from the president. So these are some of the issues that are in the Finance Act.
Okay, and thank you so much. And he is Ahmed Sise, the communications officer in the Ministry of Finance. Well, today, the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vandi, will be presenting the 2022 budget to Parliament. And very soon, ministers, members of Parliament, members from the private world, and also diplomatic and consular corps will be here to witness this particular occasion. Well, it is about the budget reading today by the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vandi, and you're watching the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation live from inside the well of Parliament, where the civil society is also part of this process, from the discussions to now they are part of this budget process. Well, I have here, a renowned civil society activist, Mr. Gillen. So, Gillen, welcome to the program. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
So, I know you've come with, several expectations, from what the minister is going to present to us today. From the civil society angle, what actually do you expect?
Well, actually, we are expecting to see that the 2020 budget will be able to address, one, poverty. Secondly, wants to see where we'll be able to see that we are not going to import rice anymore in Sierra Leone, because that is the big government is spending a lot of money on rice importation. And if we give agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, the hands to enhance them to produce rice, I think they will be, the farmers will be able to produce sufficient rice to feed the people. I expecting government to look at the rate of which the standard of living in, to speak to tell you the truth, the living standard is very difficult for everybody. But we are able to manage it up, and we are able to live up to this time. And one of the things that we learned from the procedure is some of these MDs haven't got a very strong strategies plan, and some of them have a very strong strategies plan and their policies. And we want this time the Ministry of Finance to give allocation on time to the MDAs so that they can do their work properly.
Okay, now, Mr. Gillen, the civil society always advocates, for the welfare of, the ordinary Sierra Leonean. And you spoke about, hardship. And some of the things that are going to be cushioned by this particular budget is especially on rice, as it is our staple food. So, in the first place, what do you expect, especially when it comes to the price of rice, bag of rice?
Well, you see, I'm expecting this particular 2022 budget to address that area because price is now a bag of is now escalating up. I think has to give priority to the produce market company, which is now also buying rice and they are selling produce. I we able to this budget this year for 2020 for 2022 will address that area.
So now, very soon, the Minister of Finance will arrive to present his budget. But then after the budget, and I know that as part of the civil society, you are part of the discussions, right?
Yes.
So what were some of the things that you actually put forward during those budget discussions?
Yeah, one of the recommendations that we put forward is that we put forward that government should, Minister of Finance should release allocation on time on the MDs because it's service delivering. And if you don't release the allocation on time, they do their work properly. So that's one of the recommendation. The other recommendation is that whenever government have been allocation to some of these MDs, especially Ministry of Health, Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, and also Ministry of Agriculture, they should let us know so that we can monitor it properly, and what they want to do, they can do it properly so that we can give more reports. And if you do something properly, then we can be able to advocate more for you. But if you cannot do something properly, we cannot advocate for you people. And some of these, the other thing is that we find out that this year budget discussion, there was the state enterprises which comes up. And some of the state enterprises, to be guarding enough with you, they are not doing well. And we want all discussion to address those areas.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Gillen. And he is from the civil society. And the program you're still watching is Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. We are broadcasting live from inside the well of Parliament. Today, the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vandi, will be presenting the 2022 budget to Parliament. Well, this is the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. Well, I still have more people to talk to, as people from all walks of life are here to grace this particular occasion. Well, the next person I'm going to talk to is Bokari Hensa. Bokari Hensa is also an activist in Sierra Leone, and he's here. I don't know his new capacity, but I know he has been an activist in this country. And Bokari Hensa is here to grace this occasion. Now, Mr. Hensa, the Minister of Finance will today present the 2022 budget to the world. What are some of the things that you are expecting, or what are some of the things that you want to hear from Mr. Minister?
Well, definitely, I believe that budgetary processes started several years back. I mean, I remember when we started, when I was an activist, we started civil society participation in the budgetary process. Basically, we are looking forward to a well, we still have Corona around. We are looking forward to a situation where even with Corona still around the world, we have a budget that will address the needs of the people of the country.
Okay, now the expectations of Sierra Leoneans, especially when it comes to the hike in prices is something that it's not actually something that should be shared because it is all over the place. People talk about price hike every day. So in this project, especially when there was this debate on the 2022 Finance Act, issues of tax cuts, tax waivers, did come in. So what do you expect, insofar as the prices, especially of essential commodities are concerned? What do you expect in that particular area?
Well, actually, the expectation is that the budget is going to create incentive for trade and investment. The budget is going to create opportunities for industries, to be established and thrive in the country. I believe, once those, areas are addressed, we also will have to look at the issues of customs and tariff. We also have to look at how government will prepare to make sure that the collection process is enhanced, and also to make sure that local farmers are encouraged and supported, so that the value chain of our local products are of quality, so that we are able to actually produce in our country and export. I believe that will improve on our foreign exchange situation. So these are the things we are looking at from this budget. We believe that our relationship with the Mano River Union, because it will create a bigger market. If, for example, the people of Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, and Ivory Coast are able to trade sub-region, then we have a bigger market. Then if we produce, we have people we can sell to. These are incentives we believe, will be considered.
No, in the area of countries in the MRU trading, freely, those discussions are far advanced, because I know that there is now discussions with the Gambia, Liberia, and some other countries. So once that particular thing happens, then what you are talking about will come to reality.
Well, importantly, we think that we have to strengthen these relationships. You can see how far the Ministry of Energy is going with the CLSG project, ensuring that we have an energy situation where we have the 4 countries buying in, and trying to stabilize the energy crisis in our 4 countries. So this is the approach. This is the new trend. This is why, in fact, the ECOWAS and UMOA region, we are discussing with the European an economic partnership agreement, because an economic partnership agreement that will encourage free trade. We want to make sure that it's not just free trade on paper, but actually at the border crossing point, the laws, are looked into. We have to look at how custom issues are looked into at the border crossing point. These are all issues I believe the Ministry of Finance should be capacitated. One thing I've heard from the grapevine, which is important, that is that, the Ministry of Finance should have the capacity also to look at, audit reports and hold those who, do not go according to best practices, accountable. I think that's also very, very helpful for the process.
All right, okay, thank you so much. He is a Bokarensa, an activist for many years in this country, and he's also here to grace this particular occasion. You are watching Good Morning Sierra Leone live from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. But today we are broadcasting live from the well. Yes, but now I'm also in the program. I have a member of a very senior member of staff, administrative staff here at Parliament. But in this instance, is going to introduce yourself. What's your name, sir, and your designation?
I'm Kamoke Conte. I'm the Director for Legislative Services, Sierra Leone House of Parliament, and I give advice to members on procedural matters in the chamber, and one of them is the budget speech, which is happening today.
Okay, yes, legislative consultant or director. Now, on Wednesday, there was this very hot debate on the 2022 Finance Act, which actually, almost the rest of the day was actually spent here. The debate did not end until after 10 to 11. And it had to do with legislative matters. Why, do you think that debate actually, well, I cannot say delayed, but actually spent much of the time of members of parliament and also you from the administrative wing?
And on the Finance Act 2022, of course, the Finance Act is always a precursor to the appropriation bill itself. And the Finance Act inform members as to how government intends to raise the money, from which sources, which amendments are needed, which inclusions are needed. And that carries a lot of debate. All right. For instance, if we are saying, and we have to raise money from this source and that source, some people will say, why do you want to raise money from this source and not from that other source? Why do you want to impose more tax, for instance, on alcohol and less tax on flour? So issues like that, there are several different opinions, and then that matter has to last longer than expected. That was exactly what happens on that day. And I think as a nation, we should be proud of that. Meaning that Parliament has moved beyond what we used to call rubber stamp in Parliament. All right, if members of Parliament have to sit for several hours, way beyond 10 p.m., to just discuss items on the Finance Act, you have to give them credence. Meaning we are no longer rubber stamping. We are actually looking at every letter. Members are actually looking at every figure. It's not just taking it freely as maybe, from Ministry of Finance because they say so, therefore we accept so. No. And several corrections were made, very meaningful ones.
But then, Mr. Conte, some citizens are with the view that that particular debate was rushed. I mean, the passing of the 2022 Finance Act was rushed. Some were even suggesting that probably it would have taken, 2 days or 3.
No, it wasn't rushed at all. And I've been in this parliament for over 10 years now. And we used to have the Finance Act coming maybe sometime late in December. And we used to discuss it sometime down to January to February. All right? And as a good practice, what the members have insisted, and they've made a ruling on that, is that we want to look at the finance bill before the appropriation bill. We want to know the sources from which government is raising money, not just telling us the monies that you are going to spend. All right? It wasn't rushed at all. Mind you, looking at a single bill. All right? A single bill. From 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. That's not rush. Have you seen the finance bill? It's just about 4 pages.
Okay,
and if you have to spend several hours discussing 4 pages.
But the issues, even though it is not of that kind of volume, but issues in there are very much they worth much debate.
And that was the time that was spent on it. It's actually worth much debate.
Okay,
and that's why we spent 12 hours.
Okay, now 12 hours, spent on debating the 2022 Finance Act. Now that act has been, approved, by Parliament, and today the minister is going to present the budget, government economic and financial policies for 2022. What are some of the things do we expect in this particular budget?
And as per procedure, I'm not privy to the content of that report.
Oh, okay.
And even if I'm privy to its content, it's not meant for discussion now. Mind you, the Minister of Finance has to make policy.
So you don't want to let the cat out of the bag.
So definitely no. That is a understanding other issue. 75.
Okay. SO 75.
Yes, I cannot disclose.
So you don't want to evaluate the SOs
until it has been tabled.
But the expectations of citizens, is that when we are small boys, whenever they say the Minister of Finance is going to present the budget, what comes to mind is that there's going to be increase in salaries. Price of bag of rice is going to be reduced. These are some of the things people expect. So how are these expectations managed? Being somebody who advise Parliament on legislative matters.
Well, if I can take a cue from what happened during the debate on the Finance Act, all right, you could see that, for instance, wheat, for instance, is carrying out zero and duty. It's zero now. rice is also zero, you can know the impact that one is going to have.
Okay.
You can actually possibly preempt what the finance minister is going to say towards that.
But then,
For instance, in terms of the category of taxation on salaries, that also has been reversed. If you look at also the taxation and the category of companies and their profit margin, that also has been looked into. So you can see the ripple effect that might likely have on the economy.
Because the
but I
thing
don't
is-
want to say that there's going to be increase in salary or reduction in salary. That's for the Minister of Finance to say.
all right, okay, thank you so much. And
Thank
he
you
is
very
Kramo Conte,
Yes. I
director.
want to say welcome to Sierra Leone Parliament.
Okay, thank you so much. He is the director of legislative services in Parliament, and he is Kramo Conte. Well, there is somebody. We've been joined here by the executive director of BAN. Is this BAN? That is BAN. Coordinator, Budget Advocacy Network BAN. Now, you've been part of these discussions, from the start. And this is not the first year. Every year, you're part of the non-state actors. You are called to be part of the discussions. And today, the minister is going to present, the 2022 budget to Parliament in this way. As BAN, as the coordinator for BAN, Budget Advocacy Network, what are some of your expectations? What are some of the things that you expect, of the minister of this particular presentation, owing to the fact that you were part of the discussions?
Firstly, the budget is the instrument used to provide services for the people of Sierra Leone. So therefore, for us, we expect the budget to provide the actually needed services the people want for this country, and more especially when, for example, the price of foodstuff and other commodities have gone up. So we are expecting to see some policies, some tax policy, expenditure policies geared towards pushing some of those effects on the ordinary citizens. Mind you, the ordinary citizen depend more on government services in terms of healthcare, in terms of education. So we expect the budget to go towards actually addressing the welfare of the people. But also again, presenting the budget is one thing. Implementing the budget is another thing. We have done some research and we have seen that in some instances what has been presented by Parliament is not what is actually happening. We see, for example, some MDAs receive more than 100% more than what was budgeted for them. Some receive less than 30%. So for us, the aspect of budget credibility is a concern for us. Presenting a very good plan and the policy is in place, but how do we ensure that those plans and policies are actually being implemented so that the ordinary citizens will actually benefit from those budget policies, those budget expenditure policies, those tax policies?
Now let us talk about the allocation to the Minister of Health, for example. World leaders in Africa, met in Abuja, where they made the Abuja Declaration. And the Abuja Declaration says 15% budgetary allocation, to the health sector. But in Sierra Leone, we are still to achieve that. What's your view on Sierra Leone still not, still behind, in meeting the 15% target of budgetary allocation to the health sector?
Is an issue we have been engaging on for a very long time. And the quite interesting thing is that you can see government might be allocating like 9-10%, but when it comes in terms of the actual expenditure, it's far below that particular amount. So for us, firstly, government are up to now not be able to meet that target, which is a concern for us. Looking at the perennial issue we have in our health sector, we do not, or looking at what it takes to actually finance the health sector, it requires huge investments. So for us, it's a concern, and we'll continue to call on government to see how they can push to not only allocate, but also spend what is actually being allocated to the health sector.
Now, in that health sector, a particular unit was kind of singled out. That is hygiene and sanitation. According to members of the civil society, that particular aspect, seems to be neglected in the way of allocation. The entire health budget, yes, but they want special attention to be paid to hygiene and sanitation.
Of course, sanitation is key. Research have proved that for every $1 spent on sanitation, you get $16 in return. So this just tells you that, I mean, hygiene is key, not only for hospitals, even in schools. Like quite recently, we during the government's years to dialogue, we engaged the Minister of Education. We have from their own data, we have approximately 2 million pupils that are exposed to disease related to poor hygiene. And one of our suggestions there was that at least 15% of the school fees subsidy going to school should be allocated, should be earmarked towards addressing wash issues in school. So of course, so hygiene is a real perennial problem for which investment needs to be done. And it's not only about investment. When you invest in hygiene, there will always be return. As research has proved that for every $1, you will get $16 in return. And mind you, hygiene is also related to nutrition and growth. And of course, when we have poor nutrition, when children have poor nutrition, it affects their cognitive thinking. And of course, the day before yesterday, I had the Minister of Education also emphasizing that point in terms of how does nutrition affect students in school. And again, sanitation is one part that needs to be addressed in terms of nutrition issues, which of course has a ripple effect in increasing the cognitive thinking of children.
No, Ban, you've been in this business of budget advocacy for many years now, and you have seen that some of the things you've been doing. Yes, well, you can say probably there are improvements in certain areas, but there are areas that are still, lagging behind. Now, what would be your new approach to ensuring that this particular budget that is going to be presented today by the Minister of Finance is a budget that will be workable and a budget that will be fully implemented?
Firstly, it's about how do we ensure that we dialogue on issues we think we have alternative answers to, and that is something we have been doing. And secondly, it's about monitoring all of those proposals that will be presented today and ensure that we engage government on a constant basis, reminding them that this is what you have set yourself to do for this particular year. 3-4 months, this is what you have done, and it's like we are far beyond. So constant monitoring, follow-up, and constructive engagement with government is also one key aspect. But mind you, the budget needs to be financed through our tax and revenues. So it's again, how do we ensure that NRA improve their revenue collection above what has been done? Of course, we have seen tremendous improvement in terms of revenue collection, but we want more revenue to be collected so that our key social sector like health, education will be adequately financed.
All right, thank you so much. He is the coordinator of BAN, that is the Budget Advocacy Network, talking to us about his expectations as far as the 2022 budget is concerned. Well, I've been joined by a member of Parliament of the opposition, All People's Congress, Honorable Abu. Well, he's here to also witness this particular occasion, and he was one of the debaters during the debate on the 2022 Finance Act. Now, Honorable, welcome to the program. Good morning, Sierra Leone.
Good morning, and good morning to listeners and viewers.
Now, Honorable, tell us, the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vandi, will be reading the 2022 budget today. Will be presenting this budget to the world. As a member of Parliament, representing your people, in your own constituency, and you know their needs, and you also know their aspirations. What do you expect of this budget that is going to be read by no less a person than the Minister of Finance this morning?
Well, especially at a time when the country is undergoing skyrocketing inflation in the goods of commodity, in the price of commodity, and when things seemingly are difficult in the country, we expect, goodies to come out of this budget that will be read today. And you spoke of our constituencies. There are a lot of projects that government needs to undertake in those constituencies, and that should form part of the budget. The development budget should also speak, to different constituencies, and government should gear towards ensuring that projects undertaken by previous government are either completed, because we've seen in my constituency where a lot of projects that the previous government was undertaking, especially construction of road, electricity and all of those things, we have seen drastic reduction in the supply. So to me, this is an opportunity, for government to ensure that they undertake development as part of this budget, and also they are able to do a lot of things that will mitigate against the skyrocketing inflation of prices in this country.
And so now let us go back to the 2022 Finance Act. In that debate, you were very active. Now, what are some of the things that you probably did not agree with in that 2022 Finance Act?
Well, I have said it times without number that we should not be using the Finance Act to amend other acts of parliament. When you want to amend other acts of parliament, let them bring the Parent Act and we amend it holistically. But we have seen people using the Finance Act to amend the NPPA Act. We have seen them using the Finance Act to amend the National Office of National Security Act, the ONS Act, and the National Disaster Act also. So we've seen that this is the medium through which several acts are amended, and we are against that as a parliament. We want to see the holistic amendments. We capacitate parliament. Those institutions are products of parliament, and parliament empowered them to execute their function. We could not believe it that in this Finance Act, money meant for fighting disaster are to be controlled by the Minister of Finance and the ministry. So we are against that solitarily, and we made it clearly known. And we also noticed that a lot of procurement, have been referred to as security matters, and they are going to circumvent the normal procurement processes. To us, it's against that because the Procurement Act makes provision for that. So our intentions, our dreams are to make Sierra Leone a better place, and we cannot do that at a better time than now. Let us don't use the Finance Act to usurp the offices and the powers of other institutions that Parliament have capacitated.
Okay, thank you so much. And he is Honorable Abdul Kabo from the opposition, All People's Congress. Well, you are watching Good Morning Sierra Leone live from Parliament, where the Minister of Finance is going to present the 2022 budget to the world this morning. Well, I've been joined also here by the Honorable Ibrahim Tawakonte from the ruling SLPP. Now, Honorable, today, the Minister of Finance will be presenting the 2022 budget to Parliament. And you, as a member of Parliament, you know the needs of your people, and you also know their aspirations. Now, what do you expect of this budget presentation this morning? What are some of the things that you expect in that to be in that budget?
To start with, the budget is an important moment in the parliamentary calendar. It is significant to understand that the basis of governance and the actions of government is influenced by the budget, and the functions and performance of every ministry, department, and agency is determined by what the budget represents. That notwithstanding, it is also important to know that the budget is an assumption, and that assumption is predicated on the information that this parliament will review and pass into the finance bill. And in the finance bill just passed, in the finance bill just approved by parliament, we realized that the minister was very technical. He showed that he had worked in the civil service for a very long time. He hadn't gone for a lot of tax increase or tax increment or tax adjustments. He went for procedural policy issues that would meet the needs of government. For example, he went for the minister directly getting control on the implementation of all these exceptions. He went for issues of meeting international standards in terms of meeting international best practices, and he made a lot of changes when it comes to adjustment and improvement for disaster and the management of disaster. Having said that, if you look at the theme of the budget, it's building resilience, and you cannot build resilience if you don't prepare for unforeseen circumstances. And in preparing for unforeseen circumstances, the minister has said in the finance bill that he wants to establish an emergency disaster management account, which will be open and wherein accountability will be announced, because for the first time we will have an account standby wherein if we have disaster and people go to State House or people from the international communities pledge to Sierra Leone,
there is an account that money will go to directly without contracting a fiduciary agency. So for me, this budget is presenting hope. This budget is presenting the first resurrection from post-COVID scenario, and it's going to set timelines, it's going to set determining factors for us to know what would be the next step in terms of the progress this government will continue to make in terms of reduction of basic food items, in terms of getting more projects going, concluded, in terms of making inroads in meeting the free quality education and enhancing education, in terms of improving energy, in terms of improving agriculture. So this is what we expect in this budget.
All right, and thank you so much. He is Honorable Tawa Ibrahim Tawa Konta, a member of parliament for the ruling SLPP. Well, the program you are still watching is Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. And I'm Sheku Smaila. We are broadcasting live from the Well of Parliament, where the Minister of Finance, Denison Vanley, will be presenting his the 2022 budget to the Well. Well, the person we are going to talk to next is the Financial Secretary, Sir Jusu. Well, Sir Jusu is the Financial Secretary of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Now, Mr. Jusu, the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vanley, will be presenting the 2022 budget, financial and economic policies to the Well this morning. Now, there are a lot of expectations from members of the public, and finally today, this presentation is going to be made. And as the Financial Secretary, you are like you are very essential, very strategic, in this whole process. So, what are some of the things do we expect of that particular budget that is going to be read today?
Well, in 2021, 2020, we started a lot of programs which we still need to complete. So in 2022, we don't have a lot of policy changes, but the key element of the budget is to complete what we started. So that therefore, in 2020, the theme of the budget is going to be building resilience for inclusive green recovery. In that case, we'll be focusing on climate change, we'll be focusing on things that control disaster. There is not going to be a lot of change. There are no tax increases. There are no increases in levy. In fact, what we've done is to reduce taxes and duties on cement and few other essential items, so that while the global prices are increasing, government must take counteractive measures to ensure that there is a minimum increase in prices. So as a government, what we do is to reduce taxes and duties of some of the essential items in a way to control the sporadic increases in prices.
Now, Mr. Jusu, do we know some of the commodities, essential commodities on which prices are going to be reduced? Because Sierra Leoneans are very curious. They want to know these items or services on which prices are going to be reduced.
We already know that Sierra Leone has one of the lowest tax rates in Africa. With the exception of Nigeria, our GST is 15%. The rest of West Africa is more than 15%. The corporate tax is 30%, 25%. The rest of the West Africa is around 30%. The PAYE is around 30%, the highest band. So the rest of West Africa is around that thing also. There are zero taxes and duties on rice. We've reduced taxes on energy, the renewable energy, which means those that are doing the mini solar grids are not paying any taxes, etc. So in 2022, we are going to continue with those reductions, but don't forget that the reductions will also impact on the revenue, which we need greatly to deliver services. I will not announce before what the minister is going to state, but will encourage the public to listen what are going to be the new changes in the taxes. But definitely what I will say is not going to be increase in taxes across the board.
So are we expecting a tax cut?
Yes, of course. That's what we are saying. We are going to have tax cut in few essential areas. But I will appeal that we leave that for the now. I don't want to read the budget before the minister reads.
All right, thank you so much. And here is the Financial Secretary of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Sir Jusu. Well, that is how we say goodbye. It has been Good Morning Sierra Leone, which came to you from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation, live from the Well of Parliament, where the Minister of Finance will be presenting the 2022 budget and also the financial and economic policies to the well. Good morning, Sierra Leone. Today has come to an end. Many thanks to the entire production team, especially producer Francis Barnard. And many thanks to the camera crew and other producers as well. Well, from here, we shall also continue with the program. But this particular segment of Good Morning, Sierra Leone has come to an end. Goodbye and continue watching the SRBC. I am Sheku Smiler.
No, not the call to.
To send down thine heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our deliberations, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the results of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name. Amen.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Yes, proceed, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, I move that SO52 be suspended for the business of the House to commence.
Any seconder?
I so second, Mr. Speaker.
All those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The record of votes and proceedings for Wednesday, 17th November 2021.
Honorable members, record of votes and proceedings. 1 to 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. Can a member please move?
I so move, Mr. Speaker. He is seated down. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Any seconder?
I so second, Mr. Speaker.
All those in favor say aye. All those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The record of votes and proceedings for Wednesday, 17th November 2021 has been adopted. Announcements by Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Leader, let me hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the floor to bring to the attention of members again, and with that of Minister of Finance, whom the bank governor, in line with statutory instrument that was laid in the last sitting, statutory instrument number 14 of 2021, published 11th November 2021, Bank of Sierra Leone Act Number 5 of 2019, redenomination of the Leone Characteristics Regulations 2021. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, we all agree with the ruling of Mr. Speaker and the motion moved from our colleagues on the other side, from the opposition, that the statutory instrument need to be debated and stood on the relevant provisions in the standing orders and the Constitution. That first, we should debate the statutory instrument, but we agreed that we should have a consultation based on the importance of the document that was laid. So what happened, we even asked the bank governor through the Ministry of Finance that we need to do more public awareness or sensitization in line with that document. So, but our greatest dispute, we have not had enough of the publication of that document, or they are trying to inform the public. And we've advanced reasons why they need to do so. Because we don't want the criminals to use this period as a period for them to fraud people, because the currency at the moment, people yet to understand what it entails and how does it look like. So we asked them to do the needful. We they agreed through the ministry. The minister was here. And again, we asked for a document to be circulated to members so we can understand the redenomination properly. And the leader of the opposition reiterated the point that this is the first time, he quoted 1964, that is the first time he can remember when the currency was redenominated. So we are asking again, through your good office, that they need to understand and follow the ruling that was made by Mr. Speaker and the request we made in line with the public awareness program and that of the meeting on Monday for members. The meeting on Monday for honorable members is for us to understand, but we don't have the documents at hand at the moment. So I don't know how we are going to handle the meeting on Monday. So, Mr. Speaker, we are expecting the bank governor and his team, with the professional team, to be here on Monday with the ministry. But we're still yet to receive the documents so that we can understand and we can peruse it properly for our own understanding, so we can have a better engagement during the consultative meeting. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you.
I'm sure the Minister of Finance is here. That goes without saying. And the bank governor also is here. The announcement by the leader of government business is enough notification. 10 o'clock on Monday. Not so, Mr. Leader? Yes, yes. 10 o'clock on Monday. This is very important. Leader of the opposition, do you want to say anything?
I agree with the leader of government business, and not to waste the time of the House. But we had expected, as he said, the documents today on Friday, because we had requested for them since Wednesday, but we are yet to receive any document. But be that as it may, we are still hoping that by the close of business, they will bring the documents.
Noted.
Today, the pack out a fuller cap.
Yes, clerks.
So why you not get forget long life for?
Bill, the Appropriation Act 2022, being an act to authorize expenditure from the Consolidated Fund for the services of Sierra Leone for the year 2022 and for other related matters. Introduction and first reading. The Minister of Finance.
No, the next time now they will. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I move that the bill entitled the Appropriation Act 2022 be read for the first time.
Proceed.
Right. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, since the assumption of office in April 2018, government has been implementing policies, programs, projects to address the challenges facing the country as articulated in the medium-term National Development Plan. However, Due to many competing priorities, adverse external shocks, limited fiscal space, and given technical constraints, not all our commitments are complete. In addition, emerging challenges including rising food poverty, natural disasters, climate change-related risks have led to loss of lives and livelihoods, and now deserves our attention. The recent national disaster of the fuel tanker explosion at PMB Wellington has further exacerbated the loss of lives and livelihoods. It is therefore crucial to consolidate our programs and intensify budget implementation to address food insecurity, strengthen systems to adapt and respond to climate change and natural disasters. This will also involve enhancing social protection measures, deepening human capital development, improving infrastructure, as well as stabilizing the economy. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, in addition to ensuring a stable macroeconomy, we will accelerate the implementation of budget efficiency measures to create the fiscal space to address the critical challenges. Thus, the theme of the 2022 budget is building resilience for inclusive green recovery. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I will now turn to developments in the regional and global economies and implications for Sierra Leone. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, according to the October edition of the World Economic Outlook, published by the International Monetary Fund, the global economy is projected to grow by 5.9% in 2021 and moderate to 4.9% in 2022. In advanced economies, economic recovery remains strong, underpinned by robust policy support and steady progress in COVID-19 vaccination. Consequently, economic activities in these economies are projected to grow by 5.2% in 2021 and to gradually return to an average of 3% over the medium term. China's economy is projected to grow by 8% in 2021 and to moderate to 5.6% in 2022. The sharp drop in industrial production and slowdown in public investment and consumer spending continue to put pressure on economic activities in China. Mr. Speaker, in sub-Saharan Africa, limited fiscal space for policy support and slow progress in vaccination have slowed down the recovery. Growth in sub-Saharan Africa is projected to reach 3.7% in 2021 and increase slightly to 3.8% in 2022. Mr. Speaker, the risks to the global economic recovery include the emergence of highly infectious variants of COVID-19, limited availability of vaccines in developing countries, supply chain disruptions, and rising energy and food prices. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, supply chain difficulties have led to a surge in prices of essential commodities. Brent crude oil prices increased by almost 67% to $73 a barrel in September 2021. Energy prices are projected to remain high for the rest of the year and in early 2022. Global food prices have also hit the highest level in a decade after rising by more than 30% this year, causing increasing hardship across the developing world. The price of rice rose from average of $309 per ton in 2019 to $519 in early 2021, before moderating to US $396 in September 2021. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let me now turn to economic developments in Sierra Leone in 2021 and the outlook for the medium term. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, preliminary data from the first 3 quarters of the year indicate that the economy is recovering from the contraction in 2020. Increased agricultural activities following implementation of the policy shift in agriculture that saw greater private sector participation in the input market contributed largely to the recovery of the economy. The resumption of iron ore mining, increase in construction and manufacturing activities, recovery in trade, transport and tourism sectors also contributed to the recovery of the economy. Thus, the economy is projected to record a positive growth rate of 2.9% in 2021, compared to the contraction of 2.2% in 2020. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the developments in the global economy are already impacting domestic macroeconomic performance after falling to single-digit 8.9% in March 2021. For the first time in 6 years, inflation subsequently rose gradually, reaching 11.3% in September 2021. This is attributed to the rise in fuel and food prices, sharp increase in shipping costs, combined with recent depreciation of the leone, and the resulting pass-through effects on domestic prices. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total exports increased to $301 million during the half of 2021 from US $194 million during the same period in 2020, but yet to return to pre-pandemic levels. Mineral exports amounted to $245 million, accounting for 81.4% of total exports. Of the total mineral exports, diamond amounted to $85 million, iron ore $68 million, rutile $63.6 million, bauxite $20 million, gold $3.1 million, and other minerals $5.3 million. Agricultural exports amounted to $39.4 million. Mr. Speaker, total imports increased to US $983 million during the first half of 2021 from $693.8 million during the same period in 2020. The increase in imports was largely driven by higher import of fuel and lubricants, chemicals, machinery, and transport equipment, reflecting the recovery in economic activities. Food imports declined by 17.4% during the first half of 2021, relative to the same period in 2020. The trade deficit widened to $682 million in the first half of 2021, from $399 million in the corresponding period in 2020, due to sharp increase in imports, which outweighed the increase in exports. Gross foreign reserves of the Bank of Sierra Leone increased to $695 million, the equivalent of 4.6 months of imports as at end June 2021, from $653.8 million as at end June 2020, mainly due to disbursement of balance of payment support by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and budget support by the World Bank. Consequently, despite the widening trade deficit, the exchange rate of the leone to the US dollar remained relatively stable during the first half of 2021. However, the exchange rate depreciated in the third quarter of the year, reflecting the usual seasonal pattern and speculative behavior in response of the proposed redenomination of the leone. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total public debt is estimated at 3.1 billion as at end June 2021 compared to 3.0 billion US dollars at the end of December 2020. Of this, external debt is estimated at 2 billion US dollars, 47% of GDP, and domestic debt at 1.1 billion US dollar, 28% of GDP, including the verified stock of domestic arrears estimated at $318.1 million. The increase in external debt reflects the disbursement of loans for multilateral creditors to support the implementation of projects in key sectors of the economy, including roads, energy, water, agriculture, health, and education. Multilateral creditors account for the bulk of the external debt stock. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, domestic revenue collected from January to September 2021 amounted to 4.97 trillion leones. Of this, income taxes contributed 1.84 trillion. Income taxes contributed 1.84 trillion. 1.04 trillion leones. Mining revenues, 230.6 billion leones. Royalty on fisheries, 58.8 billion leones. Treasury single account, TSA agencies, 312.2 billion leones. Other MDAs, 56 billion leones. Road user charges, 158.7 billion leones. Total domestic revenue is projected to reach 6.81 registration system ITAS for the electronic registration, filing, and payment of tax amounted to 861.7 billion leones, of which the regional energy budget support disbursed by the World Bank amounted to 270.1 billion leones, and project grants disbursed by several development partners amounted to 591.6 billion leones. The World Bank is expected to disburse additional budget support of 75 million US dollars before end of the year. Grants are expected to amount to 2.04 trillion by the end of 2021. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total expenditure and net lending for the period January to September 2021 amounted to 8.71 trillion leones, 19.5% of GDP. Of this, recurrent expenditures amounted to 6.22 trillion leones. Recurrent expenditures are estimated to increase to 7.74 trillion leones by end of the year. Wages and salaries amounted to 2.88 trillion leones and are estimated to reach 3.75 trillion leones by end of the year. This will exceed the budget amount by 82.4 billion leones, largely on account of the unbudgeted increase in salary and allowances paid to tertiary educational institutions. Goods and services expenditure amounted to 1.3 trillion leones and is estimated to reach 1.36 trillion by end of the year. Subsidies and transfers amounted to 1.1 trillion in the first 3 quarters of 2021 and are estimated to increase to 1.38 trillion leones. Transfers to NACOVAC amounted to 330.7 billion leones and are estimated to reach 375 billion leones by end of the year. Transfers to local councils amounted to 83 billion leones and are estimated to amount to 102.2 billion leones by end of the year. Interest payments amounted to 1.01 trillion leones, of which interest on domestic debt amounted to 914.8 billion leones. Total interest payments are estimated to reach 1.28 trillion leones by end of the year. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, capital expenditures incurred from January to September 2021 amounted to 2.49 trillion leones. Of this, Government of Sierra Leone funding amounted to 1.17 trillion leones. Projects funded by foreign loans and grants amounted to 1.32 trillion leones. Capital expenditures are estimated to reach 3.04 trillion leones on account of the expected disbursement of additional project grants in the fourth quarter of 2021. Mr. Speaker, the overall budget deficit, including grants, for the first 3 quarters of the year is estimated at 2.95 trillion leones. For the year as a whole, the deficit is estimated to decrease to 1.61 trillion leones, 3.8% of GDP. Excluding grants, the deficit is estimated at 3.74 trillion as at September 2021 and is expected to reach 4.1 trillion leones, 9.1% of GDP by end of the year. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the overall deficit for 2021 is financed by borrowing from both external and domestic sources. Foreign borrowing comprising project loans will amount to 876 billion leones, less principal repayments of 611 billion leones, giving net foreign financing of 265 billion leones. Domestic borrowing from the banking system comprises of 831 billion leones of government securities sold to commercial banks, 115 billion leones of ways and means advances, and 831 billion leones of IMF SDR resources on lent to the budget. Government will repay the non-banking sector of 116 billion leones through the redemption of bonds issued to contractors in lieu of arrears. Mr. Speaker, as noted above, the medium-term prospects for our economy are dependent on the duration of COVID-19. The rollout of vaccines and the recovery of the global economy. At the moment, the economy is generally stable, but considerable uncertainty looms as COVID-19 lingers. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the economy is projected to grow by 5% in 2022 and to average 4.7% during 2023-24. Growth will be underpinned mainly by the resumption of iron ore. Growth will be underpinned mainly by the resumption of iron ore mining at Marapa mines and continued increase in agricultural, construction, and manufacturing activities. The expected recovery in tourism combined with efforts to improve the business environment will also contribute to the growth prospects. Inflationary pressures are projected to moderate over the medium term, with inflation declining to single digit by end 2024. The projected decline in inflation will be supported by the expected stability in the exchange rate as exports increase. The usual proactive monetary policy stance of the Bank of Sierra Leone, supported by fiscal consolidation, will also help to contain inflationary pressures. The current account deficit, including grants, will narrow to 13.9% of GDP in 2022 and 11.2% of GDP in 2024 as export grows. Mr. Speaker, the gross foreign exchange reserves are projected at 5.3 months of imports in 2022 and to average 4.5 months of imports during 2023 and 24. The SDR resources allocated by the IMF is being used to shore up foreign reserves. The exchange rate is expected to move in line with the difference between inflation in Sierra Leone and our major trading partners. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the main risk to the outlook.
Mr. Minister, we don't have honorable partners here. Please. Please. Ignore the undertones. Ignore the undertones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the main risks to the outlook of the Sierra Leone economy include an unanticipated surge of COVID-19 cases in the midst of low vaccine uptake that will depress economic activities. Prices of iron ore beyond levels captured in our baseline forecasts. The price of iron ore fell from $214 per metric ton at end of 2020 to $123 per metric ton in October 2021 due to sharp drop in demand from China and increase in supply from Australia. This may affect production in Sierra Leone with adverse implications for GDP, exports, and domestic revenues. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as indicated earlier in this statement, several policies, programs, and projects have been initiated since 2018. Some have been completed, while others are in progress. In recent times, we are faced with food security challenges exacerbated by rising global food prices due to supply chain difficulties caused by COVID-19, as well as increased our determination to boost the resilience of the economy against these risks. Despite the challenging constraints, the 2022 budget seeks to continue with efforts to stabilize the economy by lowering inflation and stabilizing the exchange rate in order to improve the business environment for employment creation. The budget also seeks to accelerate the implementation of budget efficiency measures to create the fiscal space for spending in priority sectors. It also intensifies the implementation of ongoing programs and projects aimed at diversifying the economy in order to attain food security, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, and poverty reduction. It deepens the implementation of ongoing interventions to promote human capital development in order to improve the health and skills of the workforce. Also strengthen and expand social protection systems. Expedite the implementation of programs and projects to mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change on the production sectors such as agriculture. It also continues to ensure completion of ongoing infrastructure projects, roads, energy, water, supply, and ICT. The objective is to improve the competitiveness of the economy and create job opportunities, and deepen the implementation of governance reforms to boost donor and investor confidence and mobilize external resources. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I will now describe the detailed policies and measures in each of these areas as follows. Mr. Speaker, Honorable members, key requirement for the resilient will therefore continue to implement sound macroeconomic policies. To this end, government will continue to implement a combination of fiscal investment and boost confidence to our people and development partners. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the key objective of fiscal policy in 2022 lies expenditures to provide a fiscal space for spending in our priority sectors, including climate change, human capital development, social protection, infrastructure, and the growth-generating sectors. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, from 2018 to 2020, domestic revenue averaged 14.1% of GDP from 12.3% of GDP in 2017. Despite this improvement, Sierra Leone still lags behind its comparators. A recent tax gap it has, the full rollout of electronic cash register ECR, the integrate the customs electronic single window system with other stakeholders are the key to ensure full integrated custom processes in clearing goods, full rollout of valuation control module of Asekuda World to imported commodities and integrate it with an installed price reference database to ensure there is less discretion in valuation of imported goods. Conduct a study on effective ways to identify tax net worth high individuals and explore feasibility of establishing a dedicated unit at the NRA. They will also undertake a stock take and prepare a report on existing income tax exemptions. Mr. Speaker, in the area of tax policy, the Ministry of Finance, in collaboration with the NRA, will implement the duty waiver policy to reduce leakages in the administration of duty and tax waivers. The NRA and the Ministry of Finance will revise the Income Tax Act 2000 to reflect the new realities, especially for issues relating to digital taxation, and implement the excise tax stamp to curb smuggling and tax evasion. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, in 2022, government will develop a medium-term revenue mobilization strategy to support a comprehensive approach to domestic revenue mobilization through a combination of improved tax policies and tax compliance measures. The proposed strategy will be consistent with government's overall objective to enhance domestic revenue. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government will continue to support efforts aimed at deepening revenue mobilization in local councils. In this regard, government will continue to engage local councils and provide technical assistance to improve own source revenues. Develop revenue mobilization develop a revenue mobilization strategy and manual for district councils. Enhance automation of property cadastral system in municipal and city councils. Finalize the Chiefdom Finance study and develop a roadmap for the implementation of the recommendations of the study. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government will continue to rationalize expenditures through improvements in budget execution and strengthening controls to minimize unnecessary expenditures. In this regard, our efforts to clean the government payroll, improve execution of goods and services expenditures, and strengthen management of capital expenditures will be accelerated. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government will sustain the implementation of reforms initiated in recent years to improve the integrity and sustainability of the payroll. Recently, as part of efforts to minimize the wage disparities on payroll, government undertook a reassessment and promotion of 4,158 teachers. This will ensure that teachers are paid according to their qualifications and performance and are on correct pay scale to improve the reliability of the teachers' payroll. The reassessment and promotion of 1,100 teachers will continue in 2022. Mr. Speaker, following Cabinet approval, the implementation of the new teacher retirement and recruitment policy commenced in September 2021. The policy will ensure that recruitment and retirement of teachers is done once a year to avoid disruptions in school year and improve on the predictability and management of teacher payroll costs. Government will continue to implement the new policy in 2022. Government will also, with support from donor partners, will also conduct a biometric verification of teachers in 2022. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, NACRA completed a biometric verification of all government pensioners in early 2021, while NACIT will continue administering the payments of pensions to all government pensioners. A follow-up verification exercise will be jointly carried out by all relevant stakeholders in 2022. The objective is to have a clean and verified pension roll. Mr. Speaker, government has made significant reforms to rationalize procedures relating to the payment of gratuities to public service retirees. Going forward, the Accountant General's Department and the Ministry of Finance, in collaboration with employing authorities of all categories of central government payroll, will pay gratuities to retirees together with their last salaries effective January 2022. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the Ministry of Finance, with technical assistance from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, will complete the preparation of a payroll policy during 2022. The payroll policy will capture statutory provisions and policy instructions impacting the government payroll, which will include the different pension laws and competitions. This policy will serve as a guide for the administration of government payroll. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government will continue to strengthen commitment controls to improve the efficiency of spending and avoid the accumulation of arrears. This will be achieved through the implementation of the following reforms: the upgrading of the IFMIS from version 5.0 to web-based version 7.0, which will capture more accessible platform which reduces infrastructure cost for eventual rollout to subvented agencies, local councils, embassies, high commissions, donor-funded projects, and the like. This will facilitate comprehensive recording, accounting, and reporting of government financial transactions. The modernization of IFMIS will help to ensure that MDAs do not exceed their respective budget tag allocations, as they cannot commit expenditures outside the system. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the mandate of the existing Cash Management Committee was broadened in February 2021 to oversee cash, debt, and area management as a whole. The committee has been meeting regularly to review cash availability, prioritize expenditures, monitor movements in the stock of areas, and determine the borrowing requirements of government. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, the committee will increase the duration of cash flow forecast at least 3 months and incorporate area payments plan into cash planning. This will help government to strengthen debt and cash management and prevent accumulation of arrears and expenditure overruns. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is continuing efforts to broaden the coverage of the Treasury's TSAs, not only to mobilize domestic revenues, but also to ensure effective cash management, while TSAs has enabled government to account for additional revenues into consolidated fund. Idle cash balances continue to exist in the accounts of subvented agencies that receive bulk disbursement. To ensure efficient cash management, the government will commence the implementation of Phase 2 of the TSA in 2022. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as government consolidates public finances, preventing leakages of funds through non-acceptable procurement practices remains a top priority of public financial management. To this end, the National Public Procurement Authority has proactively ensured strict compliance by all entities to the procurement laws to promote transparency and value for money. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, to further improve transparency and accountability in public procurement, the NPPA has made good progress in introducing the Electronic Procurement System, the EGP, to transform its business processes from paper-based into a fully digitized environment. The pilot of the e-procurement system will be launched in 2022. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, in line with government's commitment to enhance the governance of COVID-19 response programs, government will continue to publish the financial statement of NACOVAC, and the statement for end June 2021 have been published on the website of the Ministry of Finance. The details of large procurement contracts are also regularly published on the NPPA website, which are subject to audit by Audit Service Sierra Leone. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is committed to improving the quality and efficiency of capital expenditures. As a manifestation of that commitment, Cabinet endorsed the draft National Public Investment Management Policy in August 2021. The policy seeks to resolve the financial, institutional, and technical challenges associated with the management of capital projects. Mr. Speaker, in addition, government will also establish a project preparatory fund managed by the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development to support the preparation of bankable projects for submission to development partners for funding. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, a necessary condition for stabilizing the economy is to ensure the sustainability of public debt. In this regard, the overall objective of our debt management policy is to ensure debt sustainability and reduce debt vulnerability going forward. The Ministry of Finance have updated the medium-term debt strategy in June 2021 with technical assistance from IMF and World Bank to inform appropriate financing strategies that will lower the costs and risks of existing public debt portfolios. Government will continue to conduct annual debt sustainability analysis to provide signals on the level of risk to public debt sustainability and explore the establishment of a debt anchor. Government will also intensify revenue mobilization measures whilst promoting export diversification to improve its capacity to repay debt. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, to minimize the burden of high external debt, government is committed not to contracting commercial loans and will seek to prioritize grants to finance development projects. Innovative financing approaches, including public-private partnerships arrangements to implement specific projects without exposing the government to contingent liabilities, will be explored. With regards to domestic debt, government will develop a domestic debt market to provide a platform to issue medium-term bonds to implement infrastructure projects while reducing liquidity and refinancing risks. Government remains committed to transparency in debt reporting. The publication of state-owned enterprises, loans, and guarantees will become a continuous practice to monitor the exposures of all state-owned enterprises and assess the implication for the national budget. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to pose a major threat to our macroeconomic and financial sector stability. In this respect, monetary policy implementation in 2021 focused mainly on ensuring low and stable inflation, bearing in mind the subdued domestic economic activity and uncertainties in the global economy due to COVID-19. Accordingly, the Bank of Sierra Leone kept the monetary policy rate unchanged at 14% throughout the year. The Bank of Sierra Leone also reactivated the COVID-19 special credit facility to facilitate the availability of critical imports in the country. In 2022, the Bank of Sierra Leone will continue to implement monetary policy framework that is anchored on the monetary policy rate as the key signal of our monetary policy stance. In this context, the identified risks to inflation, including the evolution of the COVID-19 pandemic, will inform the stance of monetary policy. The Bank of Sierra Leone will also seek to further develop and deepen the interbank market to enable commercial banks and other financial institutions respond appropriately to monetary policy signals. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the Bank of Sierra Leone announced in August 2021 the planned redenomination of the leone. This policy, which will be implemented in 2022, is expected to reduce transaction costs, restore confidence in the leone, and simplify arithmetic, accounting, and statistical competitions. Accordingly, I have tabled the statutory instrument for the policy change to this noble House. The Bank of Sierra Leone, in collaboration with key stakeholders, will soon embark on massive sensitization on the methodology, potential benefits, and challenges of redenominating the leone. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the banking sector continues to be relatively stable in 2021, as all key financial soundness indicators improved compared to 2020. In a bid to improve access to finance and deepen financial inclusion, plans are at advanced stage for the installation of a national payment switch. This will promote the use of electronic payments and digital platforms by government and businesses to pay for goods and services. To this end, government has reviewed the Payment Systems Act to strengthen the legal and regulatory framework for digital financial services. The revised Payment System Act has been presented to this noble House. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, the Bank of Sierra Leone will safeguard financial stability. As part of these efforts, the BSL will conduct thematic reviews on non-performing loan strategies and management in the two state-owned banks. Government will also develop an updated corporate governance framework for the two state-owned banks with a focus on board and senior management oversight, operational management, risk management, and compliance. The BSL has also submitted a draft Deposit Protection Fund bill to Parliament for enactment. The bill is intended to protect small depositors in the event of bank failure by ensuring that some proportion of their savings can be recovered. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the Bank of Sierra Leone will maintain a flexible exchange rate to help mitigate the impact of adverse external shocks, as well as ensure adequate foreign reserves. The BSL will participate in foreign exchange market only to smoothen out excess volatility in the market while maintaining adequate reserve coverage. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government will intensify the implementation of policies, programs, and projects to diversify our economy in order to achieve food security, promote sustainable and inclusive economic growth, create jobs, as well as to boost resilience against adverse external shocks. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, according to the Comprehensive Food Security and Vulnerability Analysis CSFSVA conducted by the World Food Programme, WFP, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, food insecurity has risen from 50% in 2015 to 57% in 2020, with 12% of the population severely food insecure. The increase in food insecurity is attributed to the increase in food prices. The higher food prices are due to international supply chain disruptions due to COVID-19. Increased fuel prices in the global market, high shipping costs, and depreciation of the yuan against the US dollar. In this regard, in addition to stabilizing consumer prices and the exchange rate, government's policy and direct investment in agriculture in 2022 will focus on increasing access to quality inputs, mechanized farming practices, transform extension services, and linking farmers to markets to achieve food security. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as part of efforts to improve food security and diversify the economy, Cabinet recently approved the adoption of major policy shift in the agriculture sector. The policy shift involves increasing the role of private sector in the procurement and distribution of agricultural inputs, with the objective of achieving food security while ensuring transparency in the delivery of agricultural inputs to farmers. The implementation of this policy shift is progressing with the following achievement: the establishment of electronic voucher, e-voucher system, the establishment of machine rings at district levels, the establishment of agricultural credit facility to provide credit to private agro dealers for the importation and distribution of agricultural inputs. To consolidate the implementation of the policy shift and improve food security in 2022, government will develop robust criteria for selection of eligible farmers to be supported under the e-voucher system. It will also develop a roadmap for input deliveries, seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and machines to ensure timely delivery of inputs in 2022 planting season. Mr. Speaker, in addition, government will formulate a policy on agriculture insurance to reduce the risk to investment in agriculture and attract private investment in the sector. Government will also strengthen the capacity of the Fertilizer Regulatory Agency and the Seed Certification Agency to perform their respective roles of regulating the standard and quality of fertilizers and seeds distributed to farmers by the private sector. The proposed two land bills are also expected to boost investment in food and cash crops. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, sustainable management of our fisheries and marine resources remains an important ingredient in government's food security program, while contributing to the economic diversification agenda. Marine products contribute to dietary diversity. To this end, government will sustain efforts in combating illegal and unreported and unregulated fishing through routine fishery surveillance patrols and remote monitoring of industrial fishing vessels, as collaborating with the community management associations to ensure compliance with best fishing practices. We'll also continue to promote aquaculture through training fish farmers on fish pond management, will rehabilitate 3 pilot farms for integrated aquaculture, as well as establish 2 fish feed producing machines. We'll continue to improve fisheries governance through the review of existing Fisheries Act and regulations. Complete the process of fish export accreditation for EU and other markets. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as women account for a greater proportion of the retail fishing workforce, government will, through the support to Women in Fisheries project, continue to provide improved smoke ovens, as well as water and sanitation facilities in major fish landing sites, including Conakry D in the north and Solima in the south, to enhance food security. These programs will also train women on improved fish preservations with a view to enhancing their capacity to meet the requirements for safe local consumption and export. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, in addition to agriculture and fisheries, the Medium-Term National Development Plan 2019 to 2023 identified the tourism sector as one of the growth sectors to aid the diversification of economy for the creation of job opportunities for our women and youths. To support the recovery of this sector and position Sierra Leone as a competitive and attractive tourist destination, the implementation of the marketing and rebranding strategy, including a new logo and slogan for Sierra Leone, will commence in 2022. The National Tourist Board will also continue to undertake robust marketing through participation in international trade fairs and exhibitions, digital marketing and promotional campaigns. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, with support from the Enhanced Integrated Framework project, government is also embarking on upgrading the Banana Island, the Tuwai Island Wildlife Sanctuary, and the Warawara Hills ecotourism sites in line with the ecotourism policy. The project will provide a grant targeting community-based tourism at the 3 sites to enhance and add value to existing facilities. In addition, government will also construct 2 information centers, one each at Balamuya at the border with Guinea and at Zimi with Liberia, in addition to the newly constructed Tourism Information Center in the Western area to provide tourism-related information to visitors. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the manufacturing sector has the potential to forge backwards and forward linkages with agriculture, mining, and fishery sectors, as well as to promote value addition to raw materials produced in Sierra Leone, thereby creating quality jobs for our youths. As a first step to strengthen the manufacturing sector as part of the strategy to diversify the economy, government will implement the industrial policy to unlock the full potential of manufacturing sector. This will reduce our heavy reliance on mining sector and minimize the vulnerability of our economy to shocks. It will also promote rapid economic growth and create job opportunities, thereby raising the living standards of our people. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, following cabinet approval, government will also implement the Special Economic Zones policy in 2022 through the provision of tax incentives, tax holidays, duty waivers, as well as streamlined customs and administrative procedures in order to boost investment and reduce business entry and operating costs. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I am pleased to report that the incentive provided to improve the domestic investment climate have started yielding results. For example, they have helped one of our leading manufacturers, Jolax Manufacturing Limited, to maintain production even during COVID-19. Now, 60% of the company's products are being exported to Ghana, Senegal, Guinea, Liberia, the Gambia, and Mali. Additionally, the company is in the process of finalizing engagements with over 1,000 local palm oil farmers to increase the quality of production and yields. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the process of diversifying the economy involves expanding investment as well as investing in new sectors. The in turn requires improving the investment climate to facilitate additional and new investments. As part of these efforts, government will continue to process the process of automating businesses, registration and licensing. The process involves integrating government to business services on a single digital platform. Efforts are underway to automate the Credit Reference Bureau and upgrade the collateral registry in 2022 to enable commercial banks to identify credit-worthy customers and promote the use of movable assets as collateral, thereby further improving access to finance. Mr. Speaker, to attract and retain investment, it is also critical for government to engage partners, collaborate, and coordinate with the private sector. Over the years, public-private sector engagements have been ad hoc, fragmented, and inconsistent. In this regard, government is institutionalizing the public-private dialogue through the newly established National Investment Board. The NIB will be conducting PPDs in a structured, consistent, inclusive, and action-oriented manner. Recommendations from these dialogues on tax matters will be incorporated into the Finance Acts. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, small-medium enterprises constitute an important source of employment in our country. To improve access to credit for small-medium enterprises, government established the Munafa Fund in 2021 with an initial capital of 26.1 billion, managed by the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency, SMEDA. As at end July 2021, 5,328 SMEs have received loans from the fund, of which 75.8% of the beneficiaries are female-owned businesses. To consolidate the program and increase the number of beneficiaries, government is providing an additional amount of 18 billion to the fund in 2022. In addition, government through Sierra Leone Economic Diversification Project will support SMEDA and DSTI to train and provide small grants to providers of business development services, including incubators and accelerators. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, free quality school education program remains the flagship program of government. Accordingly, government has continued to allocate not less than 20% of the national budget annually to education sector to ensure the continued implementation of various components of the program. Government has also carried out several reviews and diagnoses of the education sector, as well as policies to support inclusive and safe learning. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, to consolidate gains so far and accelerate progress to expand access and enhance the quality of education in Sierra Leone, government will continue to pay school fees, provide core textbooks, teaching and learning materials for all children in government-owned and government-assisted schools, and will also expand the homegrown school feeding program, provide school buses, and progressively increase the provision of assistive devices for special needs. Mr. Speaker, government will enhance inclusion in the education sector through the development of a national program for post-birth support to pregnant girls, provision of sanitary hygiene kits to girls, and the delivery of accelerated learning to non-formal accelerated learning centers, the establishment of additional learning centers for literacy programs, and complete the rollout of the basic education and civic education curriculum developed in collaboration with National Council for Civic Education and Development. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, building on the investment in basic and senior secondary education, government is also investing in quality higher education and technical and vocational training to ensure pipeline talents for public and private sector service. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Technical and Higher Education is implementing the Technical and Vocational Training TVET policy. Government has also established technical institutes in all 16 districts, while work is in progress to rehabilitate, furnish, and equip them for effective teaching education. Similar investments are being directed at teacher training colleges. Mr. Speaker, with support from the World Bank under the Skills Development Project, government is providing access to demand-led hands-on skills training. So far, over 600 Sierra Leoneans have been trained in skills such as plumbing, carpentry, welding, to name but a few. Mr. Speaker, government, through the Ministry of Technical and Higher Education and Tertiary Education, TEC, with support from development partners, conducted a national assessment national assessment study on higher education institutions in Sierra Leone. The assessment identifies strengths, weaknesses, skills, and competency gaps in public and private universities in Sierra Leone. This study also provided recommendations on how these gaps can be addressed. Thus, to consolidate the gains achieved in higher education, government will continue the implementation of 2021 University Acts that replaced the University Act of 2005. Government will provide seed money and operationalize the student loan scheme during 2021-2022 academic year. Government will continue to rehabilitate and refurbish the district technical institutes, the Eastern Technical University, and Miltimagai Technical University, and continue the construction of Kono University of Science and Technology and School of Excellence in Bonn. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government continues to maintain high investment in the health sector to improve health outcomes for our citizens, especially our women and children. Hence, in 2022, government will accelerate efforts to reduce under 5 and maternal mortality, stunting, teenage pregnancy to achieve favorable health outcomes nationwide. Government and partners will continue to the construction, rehabilitation, and upgrade of district health facilities nationwide, including Health Village at Kerry Town, and will complete the hospitals at Kenema and Masiola. Government will also launch the construction of a cancer and diagnostic treatment center and the JICA-funded Lumley Pediatric Hospital. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, Government continues to expand the National Emergency Services, NEMS, to all districts. Recently, ambulance stations were opened in the Karine, Koinadugu, and Falaba districts, respectively. In 2022, government and partners will continue to invest in the explore options for efficiency of the NEMS. Mr. Speaker, despite all of these actions, we are still faced with acute shortages of specialists across critical medical fields. To address this, government will continue to invest in postgraduate and other specialized fields of training, including the provision of telemedicine services by health staff and provide higher quality medical services to the public. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, accessible, equitable, affordable health services are critical components of the 2020 National Health Policy. To minimize the efforts of out-of-pocket payments at the point of health center service delivery, government initiated the establishment of the Sierra Leone Health Insurance Scheme. This is a sustainable domestic health financing model for increasing equitable access to health care in an efficient manner. Mr. Speaker, SLESHI aims to be a driver for the attainment of universal health coverage, leaving no one behind. The World Bank will provide technical assistance on the design and viability of the scheme. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the provision of social assistance to the chronically poor and other vulnerable groups, including persons with disabilities, in our society remains a core component of government's human capital development program. In this regard, government, through NACSA, National Commission for Social Action, will complete the delivery of cash transfers to 71,000 households in 2022. NACSA will also continue the provision of micro grants and productive skills for 500 persons with disabilities, including albinos in communities nationwide. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government will develop a social protection register to improve the targeting of beneficiaries of these support programs. Government will also enact social protection bill to strengthen the legal framework for the provision of social protection. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as women constitute a large proportion of our vulnerable population, government will continue not only to empower but also protect them. In this regard, government has taken several actions and developed legal and regulatory frameworks to address sexual gender-based violence, SGBV. Government is also vigorously pursuing normative frameworks, including adopted Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Policy 2020 and the Gender Empowerment Bill 2021, which has been tabled before this noble house for enactment. The bill, when enacted, will see increased numbers of women in elective and appointive positions, as well as improve women's access to finance. The proposed customary land rights bill addresses gender equality and rights of women, especially in land use and ownership. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as you are aware of, a high proportion of government expenditures is on the education, health, and agriculture sector, reflecting government's commitment to promoting human capital development. In a bid to ascertain the efficiency and effectiveness of public expenditure, government requests technical assistance from the World Bank to conduct the public expenditure reviews on education, health, agriculture, and social protection. These results of the peers revealed a weak link between the amount of expenditures provided to those sectors and the expected outcomes. In other words, the level of government spending has not translated into expected improved outcomes, as key indicators still trail behind our peers in the sub-region. To improve outcomes in these key sectors, government will implement the recommendations from these reviews. As a first step, government will reintroduce the Public Expenditure Tracking Survey, PETS, to track the flow of expenditure from Ministry of Finance through MDAs to the district offices, local councils, down to service delivery units to assess whether resources disbursed are reaching the intended beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, climate change is real, and we have witnessed some of its effect in Sierra Leone in terms of floods, fires, mudslides, high temperatures, and water shortages. Sierra Leone ranks 47th among 181 nations, recording high scores for vulnerability, susceptibility, and lack of coping activities with World Risk Index 2021. As part of the efforts to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change, government established a dedicated Ministry of Environment and several other agencies, including the Environmental Protection Agency, National Protected Area Authority, National Disaster Management Agency. Government is also implementing projects in several MDAs aimed at minimizing the impact of climate change. The revised Mines and Minerals Act 2021 addresses the Government will complete the construction of Moyamba Junction to Moyamba Road, the three bridges, Magbele, Mabang, and Pangama. Pujang, Jendema, Kamasinki, Majuri, and Binkolo. Mr. Speaker, in the water sector, government will continue the implementation of the following water projects: construction of 45 industrial boreholes, construction of 100 solar-powered boreholes, construction of water supply facilities in 6 district capitals, construction of water supply systems in Bond District, complete the 4-town water supply project Mongo, Matru, Jala, and Daru, and complete phase 2 of the 3 towns water supply project Bo, Kenema, and Makeni. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, with support from the China Exim Bank, government has expanded the national fiber network to 5 more districts: Kwenadugu, Kailang, Pujang, and Moyamba. The completion of this project in 2022 will provide Sierra Leone with a modern digital infrastructure that supports a digital connected and inclusive society. Mr. Speaker, government has also completed the development of a comprehensive national digital development policy that seeks to improve the internal coordination of the sector players. The policy will form the basis for the development of a comprehensive national digital transformation strategy. The World Bank has committed $50 million to the digital transformation project under the Ministry of Information and Communication. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is committed to improving governance, not only to strengthen donors and investor confidence, but also to mobilize external resources. The governance cluster accounts for 80% of the country policy and institutional assessment (CPIA) rating, an integral component of the performance-based allocation formula used by the World Bank and the African Development Bank to allocate resources to low-income countries, including Sierra Leone. In 2020, the CPIA report out of the maximum score of 6. Sierra Leone scored 3.1 overall and 3.2 on governance clusters. In a bid to expedite the implementation of Auditor General's recommendations, the Ministry of Finance established an interdepartmental committee comprising the Anti-Corruption Commission, Human Resource Management Office, Accountant General's Department, and the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. This committee is charged with the responsibility to coordinate the implementation of the Auditor General's recommendations. To complement the work of this committee, the Internal Audit Department of the Ministry of Finance will follow up with the management of various MDAs to improve the implementation of the Audit General's recommendations. Therefore, effective January 2022, Parliament has approved the withholding of remunerations, fees, salaries of the responsible officials until he responds or implements the audit recommendations. And report to the Public Accounts Committee of the House. In addition, a national transparency and accountability platform has been established in the Office of the Vice President that will coordinate with the relevant stakeholders on the implementation of the Auditor General's recommendations. The Chief Minister has also included the implementation of audit recommendations in the performance contracts of vote controllers. Mr. Speaker, following the implementation of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, it has become clear that the Act can be further strengthened to improve transparency, accountability, efficiency in the use and management of public resources. The review will introduce sanctions for non-implementation of Auditor General's recommendations, enhance compliance with Section 17 of the Public Procurement Act 2016, strengthen internal audit functions, and strengthen in-year fiscal reporting, amongst others. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, state-owned enterprises pose significant risk to the national budget as their expenditure far outstrip internally generated revenues. The 2021 Financial Performance Report, excluding the 2 state-owned banks covering the period 2015 to 2019, shows the total liabilities of SOEs amounted to 2.2 trillion leones. Going forward, government will continue to assess the financial performance of state-owned enterprises annually to better track their strengths and weaknesses and report the risks they pose to the budget. With support from development partners, government will also develop state-owned enterprises ownership policy that outlines the rationale and objective for state ownership, which will guide further reforms of SOEs and the SOE framework. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, strengthening the public financial management at local councils is critical for accountability and improved service delivery, given the level of fiscal transfers. To this end, in 2022, the focus will be placed on strengthening key public financial management functions as follows. Strengthen budget execution at local councils through streamlining and automating procedures covering budget allocation and expenditure authorization. Provide local councils with an updated chart of accounts and upgrade financial management system to ensure transparent financial reporting and timely issuance of financial statements, and strengthen internal audit functions by supporting the training of audit committees of the local councils. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the above, government will introduce the Local Council Development Grants Program. This will provide additional financing to district councils to implement selected local development sub-projects. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government has prepared a mines and minerals development bill that provides the legal framework for promoting good governance, transparency in the fiscal and social environment aspect of the sector in accordance with the 2018 Mines and Minerals Policy. The draft bill, which has been laid in Parliament for enactment, will help to reduce rent-seeking behaviors and improve revenue collection. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, only less than % of affordable land is actually in use due to institutional constraints, such as poor governance. This results in insecure tenure, which in turn leads to low productivity levels, as the private sector cannot acquire vast areas of land for investment. As part of efforts to address these issues, government has prepared the customary Land Right Bill and the Land Commission Bill. These bills seek to establish and protect property rights while encouraging responsible investment. The bills addresses the following reforms: tenure security, customary land right administration and management, customary tenure dispute resolution, gender equality and the right of women, protection of livelihoods, and responsible investment. These two bills have been submitted to this House for enactment. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I will now provide the revenue and expenditure projections for 2022. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total revenue and grants for the fiscal year 2022 is projected at 9.94 trillion leones. This includes domestic revenue of 7.64 trillion, 15.1% of GDP, and grants 2.3 trillion leones. Of grants, budget support to be provided by the World Bank will amount to 783 billion leones, and project grants 1.32 trillion leones. The budget for 2022 is fully financed with no financing gap. Principal loan repayments will amount to 740 billion leones in 2022. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the continued recovery in economic activities and strict implementation of the revenue policy and administrative measures already described will improve domestic revenue collection in 2022. Of the total projected domestic revenue, income taxes will contribute 2.71 trillion leones. Goods and services taxes, GST, 1.46 trillion leones. Import duties, 950.1 billion leones. Excise duty on petroleum products, 706 billion leones. Mining revenues, 316 billion leones. Royalty on fisheries, 142 billion leones. Parastatals dividends, 125.4 billion leones. TSAs, 413.1 billion leones. Other government ministries, departments, and agencies, 144 billion leones. Road user charges, 226 billion leones. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as indicated earlier, the expenditure priorities of government remain human capital development, economic diversification, including agriculture and food security, infrastructure development, combating climate change, and promoting good governance as articulated in the medium-term National Development Plan 2019 to 2023. The continued implementation of the programs and projects embedded in these sectors will support the resilient recovery of the economy in 2022. The composition and allocation of government expenditures for 2022 financial year reflect these priority areas. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total expenditure and net lending for 2022, including arrear payment pay downs, is projected at 11.81 trillion leons, 23.3% of GDP, compared to 10.97 trillion leons for 2021. Of these, recurrent expenditures will amount to 8.17 trillion leons, 16.1% of GDP. Capital expenditures will amount to 3.64 trillion leons, 7.2% of GDP, of which domestic finance capital expenditures will amount to 1.19 trillion leons. Foreign finance capital expenditures are projected at 2.45 trillion leons. An amount of 100 billion leons is allocated for the payment of pre-April 2018 arrears. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the government wage bill for 2022 is projected at 3.9 trillion leons, 7.7% of GDP, compared to 3.75 trillion leons in 2021. The increase in the nominal wage bill reflects government's commitment to award a salary increase of 25% to all security forces over a 3-year period that started in 2021. Employees of tertiary educational institutions, including universities, polytechnics, government technical institutes, will also receive a further pay rise of 25%. The increase in the wage bill will also cover the recruitment of 1,200 teachers, 1,000 health workers, 1,000 police officers, 200 correctional officers, 85 firefighters, as well as 500 academic and administrative staff for tertiary educational institutions, especially the newly established universities. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total interest payments are projected at 1.44 trillion, 2.8% of GDP for 2022. Of this, interest payments on domestic debt will amount to 1.26 trillion, and interest on foreign debt 178.7 billion leons. Other recurrent domestic and foreign funded capital expenditures, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the budgetary allocations to MDAs reflect the priorities of government. I will now provide the specific details under each subheading as follows. Education. The government is allocating 1.7 trillion to the education sector, accounting for 22% of the total discretionary budget to support basic, secondary, higher, and TVET education. This amount includes 752.3 billion as salaries for teachers and 292.7 billion as salaries for employees of tertiary education institutions. The sum of 126.8 billion is allocated from recurrent budget to the Ministry of Technical and Higher Education, of which 80.9 billion is transferred to tertiary education institutions and 5.5 billion to the Tertiary Education Commission. The Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education is also allocated 31.3 billion from the recurrent budget. Transfers to local councils for devolved education services will amount to 11.6 billion. The Teaching Service Commission is allocated amount of 2.7 billion. The allocation also includes 344.8 billion from the domestic capital budget for the provision of teaching and learning materials, payment of school fees, subsidies, support to the school feeding program, payment of WASC examination fees, diet for boarding schools, welfare and hygiene packages for school-going girls, and rehabilitation of boarding home facilities. Development partners will disburse 445.6 billion to support the implementation of various basic and secondary education projects, including free education project and education sector projects. Development partners are also providing 415.8 billion loans for the implementation of projects in higher and technical education, including the construction of University of Science and Technology in Kono, expansion of the Milton Margaret Technical University and Eastern Technical University construction of Center Excellence in Bond, and skills development project for the country as a whole. Government is allocating 896.7 billion, accounting for 11% of total discretionary expenditure. This reflects our commitment to progressively increase expenditure to the health sector. The allocation includes 433.1 billion as salaries for health workers, 555.8 billion from recurrent expenditures for primary and secondary health care services. The allocation also includes 174 billion as transfers to NACOVAC and 75 billion to the National Medical Supplies Agency for procurement of free health care drugs.
Hold on, Mr. Minister, hold on.
Mr. Speaker, it's past 12. I move that we suspend SO52 so that the business...
Hold on, Honorable. This is budget. This is budget speech.
All right.
Proceed. Proceed, Mr. Minister.
It's a strategy for the minister to give water.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, total allocation to the National Commission for Social Action will amount to 28 billion loans, of which 16 billion is salaries and 2.9 billion is for goods and services. In addition, development partners, including the World Bank, German Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, will disburse 149.8 billion to support labor-intensive public works, including the rehabilitation of feeder roads, as well as construction of community infrastructure, including boreholes and hand-dug wells and family toilets. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 278 billion loans to the agriculture and food security sector. Of this, 17.9 billion is salaries and 34.5 billion from the recurrent budget to cover procurement and distribution of agricultural tools and equipment. The allocation also includes 97.7 billion from domestic capital budget, of which 50.8 billion is for the e-voucher system to provide agricultural inputs to farmers. 22 billion is to support the Chiefdom Youth Farms, and 9 billion to the Onions Development Project. These allocations also include government's contribution to several donor-funded projects in the agricultural sector. Development partners, including the World Bank, ADB, IFAD, IDB, will disburse 237.6 billion to support the implementation of various projects in the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 29.5 billion to fisheries, to the fisheries sector, of which 2.5 billion is staff salaries, 15.4 billion from the recurrent budget to support artisanal fisheries activities, promotion of fish exports, including the operations of the competent authority which certifies fish exports, Transfers to local councils for fishery services will amount to 752.5 million. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 23.4 billion to the tourism sector, of which 9.3 is staff salaries, 9.5 billion from the recurrent budget as support to the National Tourist Board, Monument and Relics Commission, and the National Railway Museums. The National Tourist Board will receive 5.2 billion from domestic capital budget, including 1.2 billion for the construction of 5 tourist information centers, 4 billion as counterpart contribution. Development partners, including UNDP, World Bank, and the USA, will disburse 49 billion loans for the implementation of the Sustainable Tourism and Coastal Risk Management projects by the National Tourist Board, and 5.4 billion for the preservation of Bones Island. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 64.7 billion to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, of which 28 billion is staff salaries. The allocation includes 17.3 billion from the recurrent budget, of which 5 billion is support to Sierra Leone Investment and Export Promotion Agency, 4 billion to the Sierra Leone Standards Bureau, 2.4 billion to the Produce Marketing, and 1.5 billion to Produce Marketing Company. The allocation also includes 18 billion as support to the Munafa Fund. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 339.8 billion from the domestic capital budget to the Sierra Leone Roads Authority, of which 240.1 billion is for the completion of township roads, 9.3 billion each for the completion of the Tagri Lunge, Bo Tikonko, and Bandajuma Pujang Bondapi Road, 7.8 billion for the completion of the Hillside Bypass, and 20 billion for the rehabilitation of critical bridges in Freetown, and 12.9 billion for sport improvement and regraveling of trunk roads, and 3.7 billion for ongoing construction of the embankment and bridge in Bond Island. The rest of the allocation is government's contribution to donor-funded road projects, including ongoing reconstruction of the Penebo Kailaun and the Lomle Toke roads. Development partners, including the European Union, OFID, Kuwait Fund, Badia, will disburse 155 billion loans for ongoing reconstruction of the Bo Bandajuma Road, Bandajuma MRU Bridge to Kelomle Road, Moyamba Junction to Moyamba, and the 3 bridges, Magbele, Mabang, and Pangbama. The Ministry of Works and Public Assets is allocated 12.3 billion loans from the recurrent budget, of which 4.9 billion loans is for the repair and maintenance of government buildings. The ministry is also allocated 11.9 billion loans from the domestic capital budget for the rehabilitation of Presidential Lodge and other government administrative buildings. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 169.5 billion loans and 22.7 billion from the recurrent. The Ministry of Energy is allocated 3 billion, of which 909 million is for the Bumbuna Watershed Project. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 118.7 billion to the water sector, of which 16.9 billion is staff cost. The allocation also includes 62.3 billion from the domestic capital budget to the Sierra Leone Water Company Salwako, of which 45 billion is for the completion of construction of water supply facilities in 6 district towns, 5.7 billion for ongoing construction of water supply system in Bond, 3.8 billion for construction of 45 industrial boreholes. In addition, 17 billion is allocated to Guma Valley Water Company as counterpart contribution to several donor-funded projects implemented by Guma. The National Water Resource Management Agency will receive 3.2 billion for the construction of water monitoring systems, mapping and groundwater systems, and installation of bulk flow water meters. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 39.8 billion of which salaries account for 26.4 billion to the information and communication sector. The allocation also includes 9.4 billion from domestic capital budget to support the implementation of several projects in the ICT sector, including the National Fiber Optic Bone operationalization and expansion of the e-government platform and support to community radio stations. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 341.3 billion to the Ministry of Defense, of which 112.4 billion is for logistics and operations. The sum of 396.3 billion is allocated to the police, of which 110.1 billion is for operations and logistics. The correctional services will receive 102 billion, of which 60.7 billion for logistics and operations. National Fire Force is allocated 14.8 billion, of which 6 billion is for logistics. The Office of National Security will receive 26.8 billion, of which 9.2 billion for operations. An amount of 22 billion is allocated to the Central Intelligence and Security Unit, including 10 billion for their operations. Immigration Department is allocated 14.4 billion leones, including 7.3 billion for operations. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, budgetary allocations to other governance institutions, including personnel emoluments, are as follows: 102.2 billion leones to the judiciary, 55 billion leones to audit service, Sierra Leone, 39.1 billion to statistics, Sierra Leone, 15.6 billion to NPPA, 5.9 billion to National Monitoring and Evaluation Department, 53.1 billion to Anti-Corruption, 69.8 billion to Parliamentary Service Commission, and 336 billion to the National Electoral Commission. Mr. Speaker, an amount of 39 billion, including personnel emoluments, is allocated to the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, 400 billion to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, 199.7 billion to the Ministry of Finance. The NRE will receive 207.7 billion. Government is allocating 55.8 billion from the domestic capital budget to support the implementation of projects by several governance institutions, including 9 billion to the National Civil Registration Authority, 5 billion to the Ministry of Defense, 4 billion to the Sierra Leone Police. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating 10.7 billion to the Ministry of Gender and Children Affairs, of which 4.3 billion is salary and an amount of 4 billion is allocated for recurrent budget, of which 3.3 billion is for gender and children programs and 1 billion for the Children Commission. An amount of 1 billion is allocated for Women's Economic Empowerment Fund and 933 million for the prevention and response to gender-based violence, 460 million for reintegration of street children. Transfers to local councils for gender and children's affairs will amount to 2.2 billion. The Ministry of Social Welfare is allocated 27.1 billion. Provided support to protection programs, including diets, approved schools, remand homes. The National Commission for Persons with Disabilities is allocated 2.4 billion. Grants to welfare institutions will amount to 2 billion. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is also allocating 31.3 billion to the Ministry of Youth Affairs, of which 3 billion is for the recurrent budget as support to the National Youth Commission. The National Youth Service will receive 2.5 billion from recurrent budget. The National Youth Commission will also receive additional 2.8 billion from the domestic capital budget to support youth entrepreneurship and employment and promote youth ecotourism. The National Youth Service will receive 1.5 billion for the graduate service program. An amount of 10.6 billion is allocated to the Ministry of Sports. Of this, 3.7 billion is allocated from the recurrent budget. The National Sports Authority will receive 26.6 billion from the recurrent budget to support sports programs. Transfers to local councils for youth service and sport equipments will amount to 2.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, government is allocating a total of 71.4 billion to address vulnerabilities to climate change. The sum of 16.7 billion is allocated from the recurrent budget to the Ministry of Environment, of which 3.8 billion is for environmental safeguards and forestry conservation. In addition, from the recurrent budget, environmental protection will receive 32.6 billion. The National Disaster Management Agency, 14.5 billion. The National Protected Area Authority, 3.3 billion. And the Nuclear Safety and Radiation Protection Authority, 3 billion. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the IMF provided 238 million US dollars to Sierra Leone as part of the general SDR allocation to help address the long-term need for foreign exchange reserves, foster resilience and stability of the global economy. The reserves will also help vulnerable countries to cope with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. In Sierra Leone, while the SDR allocations will be used largely to boost foreign reserves, an amount of 450 billion leones will be on-lent to the government to provide additional fiscal space in 2022 for spending on poverty-related areas, including transfers to NACOVAC, school feeding, hygiene packages for schools, for school-going girls, national tree planting, construction of boreholes, water supply facilities in communities, as well as payment of arrears, among others. The sum of 100 billion leones is allocated for the payment of pre-April 2018 domestic arrears. Government is committed to reporting on quarterly basis on the financing and execution of these SDR-funded expenditures. Mr. Speaker, the overall budget deficit, excluding grants, is projected at 4.17 trillion, 8.2% of GDP for 2022. The deficit, including grants, is projected at 1.89 trillion, 3.7% of GDP, to be partly financed through foreign borrowings of the 1.14 trillion loans. Principal loan repayments will amount to 740 billion loans. Net domestic financing of the deficit will amount to 1.6 trillion loans, comprising of net SDR on lending of the 642 billion loans, and borrowing from the domestic banking system of 1.17 billion loans. Borrowing from commercial banks will amount to 645.7 billion loans. Government will repay the non-bank sector the sum of 187 billion loans in 2022 through the redemption of bonds issued to contractors in lieu of arrears. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the revenue and expenditure projections and the associated budgetary allocations announced in the preceding sections of this statement are subject to significant risks. These risks, if they materialize, will make it difficult to attain the revenue targets and expenditure allocations, and hence can derail the implementation of the 2022 budget. Tough decisions may be required to keep the economy on an even keel. Mr. Speaker, the first surge of COVID-19 cases will put tremendous pressure on the budget. The associated restrictive measures will depress economic activities and undermine domestic revenue collection. The need to respond to the spread of the disease in terms of surveillance, testing, quarantine, and treatment will increase government expenditure above budgeted levels and crowd out other priority spending. The most effective mitigating measure is to scale up vaccine uptake. Second, the continued rise in international fuel and food prices present another risk to the implementation of the budget. The continuous rise in energy and imported food prices could further increase government expenditure. At the same time, the rise in fuel prices can undermine domestic revenue collection if domestic fuel pump prices are not adjusted in line with changes in the international oil prices. Otherwise, government will continue under substantial pressure in terms of available resources and allocations. Such pressure will make it difficult to fund priority programs. Third, the gradual fall in price of iron ore could result in loss of royalties. Fourth, the delay in non-implementation of triggers or reforms agreed with development partners could delay the disbursement of budget support. Lastly, the occurrence of natural disasters will derail budget implementation as resources will be reallocated to respond to the events, thereby crowding out other priority expenditures. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let me conclude. As we aim to consolidate our gains, complete on ongoing projects, sustain macroeconomic stability with a focus on debt sustainability over the medium term, support commercial farming, improve the skills of our youths, continue to improve the health of our people, accelerate the deployment of COVID-19 vaccinations, invest in digital technology, and provide supportive environment for private sector to thrive. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, despite the enormous difficulties and challenges we face, we are confident that with the resilience of our people, the implementation of policies, programs, projects I have announced today will impact significantly and make a difference in the lives of our people. In concluding this statement, I have the singular honor to thank His Excellency the President, Dr. Julius Maada Bio, for steering the affairs of the state during these uncertain and challenging times. His guidance during the meeting of the Economic Management Team and Cabinet has been very useful. To the Vice President, Dr. Mohamed Jules Jallow, who launched the budget policy hearing and maintains regular contacts with the Ministry of Finance on various issues, I say thank you very much. I would like to thank the Chief Minister and other Cabinet colleagues for their collaboration and support in preparing this budget. The Ministry of Finance will endeavor to improve the predictability of the release of quarterly allocations to MDAs as fiscal situation improves. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the two Deputy Ministers of Finance for their support in fiscal and economic management, especially during this pandemic. I would also like to thank the Financial Secretary, the Principal Deputy Financial Secretary and Chief Economist, the Director of Budget, and all directors and staff of the Ministry of Finance for their support in designing and implementing economic policies and programs, including this policy statement. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I specifically want to thank the Minister of Development Secretary, and staff of the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development for their contribution in preparing the capital budget. The contribution of the technical leadership and team of all MDAs cannot be overemphasized. I also want to thank the Governor, Deputy Governors, management and staff of the Bank of Sierra Leone for their continued policy coordination in support government's economic recovery program. Also, I want to thank the Commissioner General and staff of the National Revenue Authority. They deserve special commendations for their continued efforts in the mobilization of revenue. I also wish to acknowledge the role of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, the Solicitor General, the staff of the law officers, department for the facilitation and finalization of various bills and statutory instruments required for the effective management of our natural and public financial resources. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I would like to commend the House of Parliament, including your good self, the clerk and his staff, for the usual bipartisan manner in handling economic management matters brought to this noble House for consideration, approval, and ratification. I'm confident that this budget will be accorded similar treatment. Mr. Speaker, my appreciation also goes to the non-state actors, including Budget Advocacy Network, BAN, Invest Alone, District Budget Oversight Committees, civil society organizations, and members of the electronic and print media who participated in our bilateral budget discussions and regularly monitor, engage with reports on activities of the ministry. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I would also like to thank, not only recognize, but also express my profound gratitude and appreciation to our development partners, especially the IMF, the World Bank, the EU, the ADB, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office of the UK government, ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, the Islamic Development Bank, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, the USA, Japan, China, India, Ireland, Canada, and the UN family for their unflinching support, even though they are also battling with their own effects of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to acknowledge the role of the international and local NGOs in complementing the efforts of development activities in government in the key sectors. The activities of the Catholic Relief Service, CRS, World Vision, Oxfam, CARE International, Plan International, MSF, ACF, Partners in Health, USAID, the Education for Health, water and sanitation, agriculture, and governance sectors are duly recognized and appreciated. Government will continue to coordinate and oversee these complementary development activities of NGOs, especially at local levels. As usual, the government printer and staff rose to the occasion and printed the budget statement and estimates on time. This is very critical for the next stage of this process. Your untiring efforts are appreciated. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, this budget seeks to resuscitate the economy to not only build back better, but also greener, as a clean, carbon-free environment is the best legacy for our well-being and future of our children. I therefore commend this budget to the House. Which one? This? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I move that the bill entitled the Appropriation Act 2022 be read the first time.
Honorable members, before I put the question, I wish to...
No worry.
I wish to recognize the following distinguished personalities of the state. You may want to know them because maybe you need assistance for your constituents, so it's good that we know them. They are here. Let me start first and foremost by mentioning, I'm sure many of them have left already, but I'll just mention them for the sake of it. Dr. Prince Alex Harding, are you here?
Pow, 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 pow.
Dr. Prince Alex Harding, Dr. Prince Alex Harding is the chairman and commissioner NCP. And of course, chairman of SAPP. Alaji Kanja ICC, Kanja Sise, okay, he's left. He's the Minister of Energy. Dr. Francis M. Kakai, is he here? He's the Minister of Planning and Economic Development. Mr. Sheku Fantamadi Bangura, Deputy Minister of Finance too, and also Chairman NACOVAC. Mr. Sir El Jusu, the Financial Secretary. Dr. Kefala Kalon is the Governor of Bank of Sierra Leone. Dr. Ibrahim Stevens, First Deputy Governor, Dr. Ibrahim Stevens. Mrs. Memunatu Pratt, Minister of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Is she gone? Mr. Mohamed Gondo, Deputy Director General, NASIT. Dr. Samuel S. Jibao, is he here? He's gone. Commissioner, NRA. Ambassador Mohamed Yangao, is he here? Yangao. Please stand up when your name is mentioned. Please stand up. Mohamed E.K. Ali, the Minister of State, South. Mr. William I.K. Robinson, Deputy Minister of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, is he here? Bwakai Bindi Hindowa, Deputy Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, is he here? Mr. Mohamed Kone, Commissioner and Chairman, NEC, is he here? Mr. Ambrose James, is Mr. Ambrose James here? Director NAO. Mr. Mohamed Kalon, CEO RMFA. Mr. Ismon Ngakwi, Director of Public Prosecutions, is he here? Mr. David N. Bobo, Director FIU, is he here? Basha Sharif, RMFA Deputy CEO. Andrew Jaya Kakai, the Chief Immigration Officer. Peter Sampakra, Development Secretary. Dr. Lawrence Sandi. John Sumaila, Secretary to Cabinet and Head of Civil Service. Dr. Abdullahi Fofana, General Manager, Sierra Leone Ports Authority, is here. NASA AA Commander Bonge, Chief Fire Officer. Mariatu E. Kaikai, Sierra Leone Red Cross. Is she here? Okay. Shaka Samuel Sano, CEO, SMIDA. Mr. D.S. McFoy, Deputy DG, Ministry of Defense. And finally, Mr. Abdul Aziz, Acting Auditor General. Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, the question is that the bill entitled the Appropriation Act 2022 be read the first time. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The bill entitled the Appropriation Act 2022 has been read the first time.
Yes, Mr. Leader.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I stand on SO 51 to committee bill for a debate for the second reading.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any announcements? Wednesday?
We don't sing an Akono yesterday.
Honorable members, this sitting is adjourned to Wednesday, the 24th November 2021. Sorry, honorable members, please sit down. Sorry. Please sit down. There's a motion, also. There is a motion on floor. Any seconder?
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so second.
I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. This sitting is adjourned to. You didn't have announcement?
No.
Okay, pronounce it here.
Pursuant to Standing Orders 51, the appropriation bill has been committed to the second reading.
I have just been informed, honorable members, that there is lunch for honorable members. Contact the leader of government business for further details. The sitting is adjourned to Wednesday next week, 24th November 2021 at 10 a.m.
I'm not going to join them, man. Then. You're not chairman and leader for life.
so far, the budget touch on plenty things them. But do not forget the fact that the COVID-19 affect a lot of things, whereby government for the raise revenue, and then government for the exports. That is, you pull something come out of the country for can go overseas. So that make government slow forget. Well, I get the minister now quickly. I just want to put her on the spot. Welcome, sir, Mr. Minister, Dr. Francis Kaikai, and the Minister for Economic and Development Ministry, Planning and Economic Development Ministry. Now, of course, the minister don't read the budget, for 2022, yes. And of course, you ministry in a part of the planning in terms of the budget. I'd like to go like small bits. Whose kind of budget this?
Oh, this is a budget for recovery and a budget for COVID period, because we're still inside COVID. And you can see inside the budget is very clear. For say, government still they hold on to in priorities. Government want to make sure they will recover. Now that this budget they're all about. And going forward, very cautious, and they try for make sure say the thing we will not go finish this year for make it still in the budget for 2022. So now it makes us with the focus continue for the on human capital development. So the priority is still education, health, agriculture, and then infrastructure there now, because it's very, very critical. And also government don't start very critical projects, especially in the energy sector, in the water sector, and in the road sector. So on the infrastructure side, they want it very critical. Then of course, for diversify the economy, tourism there inside as well, and the mining sector, and they try for revival. All this now for just help for generate the revenue, and at the same time try for make the people them feel part of governance and make them feel say that they're part of the country, because government allocation very important. Because not this budget they're about.
But at the end of this time in the time of talk even though with all this, some difficulties ahead, in terms of people looking at the bread and butter.
Yes, difficulties in the ahead, because we still get this COVID with us. And since COVID is a global business, it don't affect the supply chain globally. Meaning, the one day where they supply things that we Sierra Leone need, because we are part of the global village. Then they find them very difficult now. Shipping lines, and they find them difficult for move across the globe, very with difficulty. So then prices are all on go up. So as a result, the price of goods that when they move across the countries around the world, they're all on go up. And of course that affects Sierra Leone very badly, because we essential commodities, we still depend so much on importing the bulk of the rice we consume, especially here in Freetown. Then also the bulk of the other goods and services that come into the country, they all on go up. Cement price, you still don't see, they affect the construction industry. All the basics, and these are the bread and butter things where they get affected. Flour for coming, this and that, and all of that. So it's a challenge, and since COVID still there, we're not going to say don't go. We already say the boss in some place, and we should be very cautious. Holiday they come again, we will get a lot of Sierra Leoneans coming back home. We pray God make plenty not come with that sick time again. May not come create problem for we. So now I make the finance minister therefore be very cautious and say risk their head. So more all be very cautious. This price business, it transmit from the international community, law with the watcher carefully. Also, the one day we they assist Sierra Leone for development purposes, then save them budget, they go down. Because they get a lot for doing that in country, then for do stimulate the economy there. So then save, which then they can get less. So those are the risks to the budget, and we will get for be aware of. And as Sierra Leone, the greatest challenge we will get, now for more we say produce more. We agriculture for be more productive. We for produce more food, more rice. We for produce more commodities that we will export, so that we say we'll get money from that. The mining sector, they try, because they will don't get all we money from for export and all of that. And also, very important, ships that they bring goods to Sierra Leone, then go only come with a new sea, then they take things that are from Salone for go back. You see, now they make other countries they do well. The one where they produce, where they sell things out, then they do better than we, because we, unfortunately, we not they produce much who they sell out. And they decided when they make the roads, they'll go fix them. The young man them plenty. not in cocoa and coffee again. Like this season where they come to now, not coffee and cocoa season. First time where you go upline, Boku side, and you see a lot of them things that they happen. There you see then they dry coffee, then they dry cocoa, Boku side. But where you go now, Boku man in our Okada business and now all in villages, and it creates a challenge for me. So how for transform that? Now part of the challenge we all get as a society. And we'll get to do something about that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Francis Gaka.
Most welcome.
I appreciate you, sir.
Most welcome.
Thank you. All right. Well, of course, the Minister for Economic Planning, he tried for explain to me. He tell me a lot of things. We obviously we as Unions we for be cautious. We for always remember say, well, better days ahead. But the minister may make some budgetary allocation to different ministries and MDAs. And the money then they, of course, will forgive the ministry, especially the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Works, the infrastructure, we, of course, the roads, for make sure, especially hillside bypass road, where everybody they look and say, at least that would be for done this year. But it's unfortunate, maybe it will be early next year because of the allocation within the Ministry of Infrastructure. And even the Ministry of Energy, they allocate, you know, for at least we're able to get steady supply of electricity, the water resources for make sure say people are able to get clean pipe-borne water, and even, of course, the small agencies where government provide money for so that they go able for get money where they go able for do their work. But all the same, if I not say people actually will expect some other thing in the budget. But I mean, yeah, from the minister, whose kind of budget this, they look at recovery and see how with this COVID, if the COVID done at the world, then a lot of things then will change. But for now, when once the COVID day around the world, and even now with the suspects again, say some country them, the COVID don't go up, and then apart from that, they things them, we of course that commodity, we for the kind of country, they can be very expensive, and whilst we not able for exports, you know, plenty things them at least because for now, if we get cocoa, we get coffee, we get you know, the product them go for export, we for able for make money. Then they go make the foreign exchange a go down because for now, just because of that, they will not able to get enough foreign exchange, you know, for they at par with the leon. So that they make the leon they depreciate because we not get enough foreign exchange. Couple up with a lot of other things them where they make we're not able to move as a country. So in fact, the budget for the year 2022, we will get to see that the NRA go able for get revenue, you know, we of course they call domestic revenue, for able for raise them money then they so that they go able for support government allocation to MDAs so that they go able for carry on the job for them for do. So if you then also you expect some other things say things should be okay. Yes, things will be okay, but it depends if we're able to make sure say we come together and put under control the things that where they affect we, where they make a lot of growth not happening in the country, then we see say we're able to grow gradually. But with all that, the minister they tell you say small will they come up small. Yes, we not each day, but I know. Yes, we talk about rest. You know, when one of the bread and butter thing, we they talk about flour, we they talk about essential commodity where we need a bit for make sure say from rest we already get zero tax, but cement, iron rod for reduce the tax, but iron rod for reduce the tax, but because it involve a lot, the shippers and the one that we get container, a lot of other things them. So that's alone the slow, because for now we're not able to forget export diamond, much gold, then mineral and they we for bring enough foreign exchange at the country. We for make of course prices they're able government able for inject things them we go make prices then go down. But then we still get a challenge of this COVID. We make the one them with the growers, obviously let's have gets the problem of COVID. The one them way obviously they make them container, one day we get them sheep, then they look say then they run at a loss, because if they take the ship then kind of certain country, especially like Sierra Leone, they're not able to get nothing for take back. So we, definitely for now, we go for the under difficulties, but we believe say that the government will try for make sure say they cushion them so that people are going to begin enjoy the bread and butter. We now the main key thing we most Sierra Leoneans they look for. Well, now so we go wrap up for today, because we don't there since this morning, and we intend for wrap up now and hand over back to New England so that then we'll go for continue the day's broadcast. For now, that's the bill. We the minister, of course, the budget where the minister don't read for 2022, so that MDAs them go for implement their work, and the things that we not able for done, and they see how they go for make sure see they speed up and then more, as I tell you now, the roads and some other key area we actually they touch the lives of Sierra Leoneans. Plenty thank you to you who listen to the SLBC, and I want to tell, of course, me cameraman Jerry Cole, plenty thank you, David Williams, and of course to get other people in our support, Alex Sisse, I'm a technical man, and on behalf of the management and staff of SLBC, thanks to all colleagues, New England and Leicester Peak, we by the way contribute for broadcast this program live from the Well of Parliament. Well, until then must say the name, and I wish you a pleasant Friday. Bye-bye.
Well, I think